Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar, Control a World of Computers from Your Linux PC. I'd like to turn this presentation over to Andy Oram, Senior Editor with O'Reilly Media.
Hello, Andy.
Thanks, Catherine. Catherine didn't introduce herself. She's a staunch publicist at O'Reilly. Welcome to O'Reilly's second author webinar. I'm going to introduce Carla Schroder. Linus Torvalds often declares that his goal is world domination. Most of the participants on the seminar can't hope to reach that height, but you can all dominate a few chosen desktop systems around the world. This fact is one of Linux's selling points and is provided by several remote desktop and administration programs. Programs such as VNC and Desktop run on a variety of operating systems, so you can help a client on a Windows, Macintosh, or a Linux system while sitting at your Linux system on another continent. You can control two computers from a single keyboard and monitor, share a single desktop with a classroom, and wander freely with your wireless laptop while connected to your main workstation. System and Network Administrator Carla Schroder has been advising Linux users through articles, consultations, and books for over 10 years. Her two O'Reilly books are the popular Linux Cookbook and Linux Networking Cookbook. Her columns also appear often on our onlamp.com site. Carla can speak about almost anything Linux or sysadmin related, but today she's going to tell us how to use some remote desktop programs to do customer support and other tasks. Carla will take about 20 minutes for her demonstration. You may type in questions at any time. When the demonstration is over, Carla will choose questions and answer as many as we have time for. There are 250 people signed up for this conference, so please be understanding if we couldn't get to your question.
All right, are you seeing my screen now? You should have a picture of my most wonderful computer room where I spend my days. I'd just like to point out a few key features. There is an actual window to let in daylight. I know that real geeks don't have windows, but, I like having a window. Over here, next to the laptop, is the computer cat. You got to have a cat. It's very necessary to have hair getting into everything and have her walking on keyboards.
So this is a picture, not real time. Yeah.
Right. And actually, this is my test lab, my main workstation. I mean, this is where I do my work. It's a really nice situation. I love being able to work at home. Today, this demonstration, you're only going to see it on my main work screen, but it's going to have three computers. I have a Linux computer in the middle, a Linux computer on the left, and Windows XP on the right. Remote administration is one of the things that Linux does really well. Now, I work in SSH a lot. I'm sure you're all familiar with OpenSSH. That's pretty much a standard system administration tool. It's the fastest because, of course, the text interface is always the quickest. Okay, I'm going to bring up my little cheat sheet here. Now, I suppose most of you must know this incantation, SSH-Y. That lets you run graphical Linux programs over your SSH session. So you can do both text and SSH. Okay, I am now logged into my left-hand computer, and I can run everything here from the command line just as if I were sitting at it. Well, maybe you don't want to just do everything from the command line. So you can run any application that is installed on your remote computer. Let's say I want to edit this text file right here, and I don't want to use Nano or Vim. I want to use Kate. Okay, I won't use Kate. I'll use Kwrite, since Kate apparently is not on that computer. And there we go. So here I have a nice friendly graphical interface. It's pretty fast. It's almost as fast as sitting right at that computer. I use this a lot. Of course, my laptops are both wireless, so I can just wander around the house and work wherever I feel like working. I don't have to stay trapped in this little room all day, even though it is a very pleasant room. Now, maybe I even want to bring up a file manager. can see, I like KDE. I like it a lot. Come on. If only it could type for me. And we will just open. Come on. The file management profile. Okay, and there's everything. And I can just go to town here again, just like I were sitting at that computer. This is one of my favorite ways to work. I think a lot of people, when they think of remote graphical administration, they want to see their whole desktop. And you can do that. It's slower. It's more resource intensive. This is just a little faster and more efficient. SSH Safety Basics. You know, of course, that you never ever want to enable root logins except under exceptional circumstances. So here I am, Carla at Ripley. If I needed to be the root user, then I'll just do it from here. That's just a nice little safety measure because there are a lot of brute force SSH attacks all over the place. And even on your own network, if you have your own little network at home, it's probably not such a big deal. But in businesses, inside jobs are still the biggest source of problems. It's not the outside hackers trying to get in. All right, and that's enough of that. Now, SSH file system. This is a really neat way to do remote editing on your documents. I already have it set up. What you would do is first create a local mount point and then run a command like this. My local mount point is the temp folder. So I am going to mount my home directory that is on Ripley in the temp folder. So you just use your same old SSH password. And there's all my files, again, just as if I were sitting at Ripley instead of at Zenith. And now, if I want to use my file manager, Conqueror, then I just use the local one. And this is pretty fast, too. And this is a great way, if you have a lot of documents to edit, then there they are right there. Ordinarily with SSH, if you're just using command line and a non-graphical interface, you're just working on one file at a time. If you have a lot of files to work on, this is faster and more efficient. And it's just like working on your local system. There aren't any weird little glitches like you get sometimes, say, with Samba. The GIMP, the graphics editing program, that's one example of an application that has a little bit of problem editing files from a Samba share. You have to copy them to a local directory. It's not able to edit a file directly in a share, while other applications can. So let's just say goodbye to this. And when you're finished, you run this command, fusermount, to unmount your local mount point. And as you can see, all gone. Slick and quick. Now, a big problem for a lot of Linux and Unix administrators, they still have to write herd on Windows computers. And Windows, it's a little more difficult to do remote administration. It has some funky tools. And it actually has some good ones, too. For the good ones, the sticking point is usually the cost. You're paying for all these access licenses. So in the open source world, we have our desktop, the remote desktop program. Now, this doesn't work on all Windows, on all versions of Windows. Excuse me. It's a client for Windows terminal services. So you can use it with Windows XP Pro, any Windows Server, Vista Business Edition, Ultimate, or Enterprise. Windows NT Server as well. It doesn't work on Windows 98 or ME, and I don't think you'd really want those in a business environment anyway. So the first thing you need to do is go into your appropriate configuration box in Windows and set it up to allow these remote desktop connections. And then it's just this simple, just the command rdesktop and the host name or address of your Windows computer. And there it is. Since I am running XP Professional, it will close close out, it will lock out the section on the computer itself, so only the remote session is active, so nobody can come along and mess with it while you're in it. And here you are, and you can use it just as if you were sitting at your computer. It's really nice. Now there's a few little gotchas with our desktop. Because of the way Windows handles user IDs, it sees a remote user differently than a local user. So if you go to install software from our desktop, you might end up with some strange permissions problems and ownership problems. But everything else you can do just fine, no problems whatsoever. Now this is only a remote session connecting to this computer. You can't copy and paste files out of here like you might be used to with some other programs. So there we are. Okay, our vitally important Minesweeper. Okay, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. I usually get blown up. And to turn off our desktop, just go like that. I'm going to bring that back up because the configuration for this is buried in an odd place. And it's different for every version of Windows. You know what? I'm not going to try to find it because I realize I just forgot. I know where it is for Vista, but not for XP. So let's not take the time to look that up. But yeah, it's great. And with Windows XP, you can connect one remote session at a time. With the other versions of Windows, depending on which one, you can have more concurrent sessions. Now that's, unlike SSH, our desktop operates in the clear. It is completely unsecure. And one way to secure it is using SSH. You make an SSH tunnel. So you see the command on your screen, SSH-L, the port number, localhost, repeat the port number, and then the machine you want to log into. Now I have already set up ThinkPad, forgive the pun, it's an IBM ThinkPad of course, with Cygwin, and I'm just using plain old OpenSSH. It's not any special Windows tools. I have my nice little Linux environment on there. So, and I also have it set up to authenticate with a public key rather than with a password. So, we are connected. So now we go here, and instead of saying our desktop ThinkPad, it's our desktop localhost because we're connecting to this end of the SSH tunnel. And there it is. And you can easily verify with a packet sniffer that your transmission is indeed securely encrypted. Here's what the Cygwin environment looks like. That's a really handy tool. I think I think a lot of Windows administrators use it already. If you don't know about it, I think it's worth exploring. Here we go. It installs a little setup program. You just double click on that. And the first time you run it, it installs about 40 megabytes worth of just base files. And then after that, when you want to add any programs, you just rerun the setup program. Okay, just waiting for, and here we have just this nice little tiny window. Here's all your package groups. And you can just go through here, select the ones you want to install. Let's make this a little more visible. There we go. So where you see it says skip, that means it is not installed. So you would click on that to install it. The B column, that means binary. S means source. So check the little box on the right here if you want to have the source code. And it's that easy. Alright, let's say goodbye to our desktop. And let us close our tunnel. And probably spelling the command correctly would be good. The VNC, that's Virtual Network Computing, family of remote applications is huge. There are, I don't know how many VNC derivatives for all occasions. There are tons of them. This particular Here we go. This particular version of VNC is Type VNC. Now, for this to work, you have to be already logged into your Windows session. And I have set a password in the VNC Server. There we go. And there we are. Now, the thing that makes Type VNC and other versions as well work so well on Windows is by using the DF Mirage virtual graphics driver. This is what the binary looks like right here, the little installation package, DF Mirage. It's a free download. And this makes your VNC sessions considerably faster. If you don't use it, they're going to be pretty boggy. This sets up a virtual video driver that's very fast. The VNC server was already started. It has to be running before you can connect. And you can configure it to run as a service, which is an installation option. And you have various options here. You can set a password, which is a good idea. It's not real strong encryption. I mean, it's not real strong security, but it's better than nothing. If you want to change to a different TCP port, you do that right here. There are VNC viewers that run in your web browser. They're usually Java-based. These by default run through port 5800, and again, you can change that here. And there's really nothing exciting in any of these options here. Just, you can go through them and give it a little bit of tweaking. There aren't too many useful tweaks you can do. But again, here you are. You're in your Windows system. You can do anything you want just as if you were sitting at it. VNC also runs in the clear, unencrypted. So to run an encrypted session, I'm going to show you the command. I'm not going to run it. It's just like the one for our desktop, except you change the port number, and that's all there is to it. You have to have the SSH server running on your Windows box in Sigwin. And I'm not going to get into that here, but it's easy to find out how, and especially if you buy my book. Let me put that back. And I know sometimes people get a little bit confused about host names, how to remotely access a PC. If you want to do this over the internet, definitely don't do it in the clear. Do it through an SSH tunnel. That can get a little complicated because you'll have to get through your firewall, and you'll need to use your whole fully qualified domain name, which looks like this. And that's assuming your own internal name services are clean and working properly. You can also use the IP address. Assuming you have, well, this is not a publicly routable address. It's just an example of using an address, but there you go. So you can see it's very versatile and flexible. Now, another cool thing you can do, also in the VNC family, is you can control several computers with a single keyboard and mouse. I don't know what the upper limit is. I've had 4. The program that does this, that you install on Linux, you have your VNC server on your Windows box. It's called X2 VNC. So if you can see the command now, stinkpad:0, that means connect to the existing display you're going to attach to a running session. East means right, because the computer's on my right. I type in my VNC password. Okay. Now, when I move the mouse to the right, I'm doing this slow because I'm not sure how fast y'all are able to see this. Look how it appears on the Windows screen. I am controlling that from my Linux box. I move it over to the left, and boom, it's back on my Linux screen. Now, we can even go a step beyond. That's all good to go. I have lost my mouse. That's one of the perils. You can get lost. Come on. Okay, and just so you can see it, come back. Here we go. I'll open up yet another VNC session. And this is using, Linux has all kinds of cool little graphical tools for administering this too. You don't have to use the command line. We're already connected to Ripley 0, so let's connect to Ripley 1. Okay, you should see that mouse coming over from the right side. Okay, it's not coming over from the right side. Okay, we got a little unexpected behavior here. I can't show you, but you know, here if you could see my see my three computers lined up, you'd see this cursor going back and forth between all three of them. So let's just close out Ripley there. Now there are a few little gotchas you have to watch for. With any of the VNCs, when you're logging into Windows, you have to have, Windows, you already have to have an open Windows session. If you're not logged in, then it won't work. With our desktop, it doesn't matter either way. It will close out the local session. And I think that just about covers everything. There are a lot of variations in the VNC family. Personally, I use SSHFS a lot and our desktop. The VNCs are nice. Our desktop's faster and more efficient. VNCs are nice for Windows systems that don't support the Windows terminal server. And if anybody has any questions, I am ready to take them. Okay, I am looking through the chat. Yes, somebody mentioned Synergy. That is a really nice application, and in fact, I should be writing an article on that pretty soon. FreeNX, good question. FreeNX is good when it works. It's a closed proprietary system, which for me is a little bit of a black mark. I really like open source software. The FreeNX server requires no machine's proprietary client. There's not an open source client. And sometimes there is a version mismatch between FreeNX and the free server and no machine, the proprietary client. So, you can't always find matching versions. So, I would just go ahead and use no machine server and client. It's simpler. You'll always have matching versions. They have free of cost versions, and they also have commercially supported versions that you pay for. They're kind of expensive, but they work great. What can you do via SSH into Cygwin? Well, you're a little bit limited because Windows doesn't, you can't run Windows the same way you can as a Linux or Unix box. Any kind of text commands, it's strictly a text interface. Because you can't, the Windows doesn't have X Windows, and SSH supports running X Windows, but not the Windows graphical drivers, so you're just limited to text. So you can edit text files, you can run commands from the command line, but you can't run graphical applications. Does our desktop support sharing? Yes, it does. Printers, drives, anything you can do in your Windows, inside your Windows box, you can also do through our desktop. If your Windows box doesn't already do those things, then our desktop can't do them either. But you can go in and tweak your configurations, no problem. Are there any terminal services like Windows that run on Linux? Linux does have its own terminal services application. I think there's more than one. The one I'm familiar with is called Linux Terminal Server Project. A really nice friendly introduction to that is Ubuntu, which is obviously an Ubuntu Linux offshoot. It's all nice and rolled up in an easy-to-use package. It just takes you a few minutes to get the server and your client set up and running. There is also the K-12 LTSP project, which is run by a couple of teachers, and that's designed for primary schools, and that is a really neat project. They've done a lot of good work. You can use VNC via XINet. Yes. Okay, here's a good tip from one of you fine viewers. You can use VNC via XINetD, which is the super daemon that spawns other daemons, to spawn VNC sessions from a central server. That sounds really cool. I didn't know that. I'm always a little bit nervous about opening up remote access to Windows machines just because they are so vulnerable. There's so many ways to exploit them, and I'm probably more careful than I need to be. But that sounds like a really good hack. Typically, when I don't leave VNC sessions running. I keep my Windows machines locked down until I know I need to get into them. So, maybe it's not all that useful, like if I'm on a desert island and need to log in, but that's the way it goes. It's just, I feel safer not leaving them exposed all the time. Also, in the book, if you're interested in the book, there are quite a few recipes on getting these services through your firewall and doing it safely. And there's also some cool SSH hacks for setting it up so you can log in remotely to different machines with just a command instead of having to type all these long command strings. Difference between our desktop. Okay, here's a good question. What is the difference between our desktop and VNC for controlling others' desktop? Our desktop is a little faster and more efficient. You can take control of a live session. I guess you would call that help desk, where somebody's having problems, so you just want to log in remotely instead of making a trip to their desk. And I would always use our desktop first if it's possible. It's about the same amount of work to set them both up, because with our desktop, it's not enabled by default in any version of Windows, so you have to go in and enable it. And as we already discussed, it only works on a limited number of versions of Windows. VNC, you need to install two programs, VNC and the DS Mirage graphics driver. Our desktop and VNC seem a bit sluggish. Is there anything that can be done to speed them up? There is. Part of the issue, you can try compression. Sometimes compression makes them faster. Sometimes it actually slows things down, but they both have options to compress your stream. Anytime you're running graphical session over the network, it's just the nature of it that it's going to be a little slow and laggy. That's where FreeNX has the advantage over all of these. They use some kind of magic algorithm that really speeds it up. It's very fast. It's even over dial-up, it's not too laggy. So if you had to do a lot of remote Windows administration, you'd probably want to have a look at FreeNX or No Machines NX implementations. Reverse SSH. Okay. I don't use that a lot. I would have to look it up, but that is really slick. That is a way where you can safely set up a remote session, and just have it all ready for you. I'm afraid I can't be more specific than that. So I'm just going to say Google on reverse SSH, and you'll find a lot of good tips. But yeah, it is a handy tool. And it's also something that system and network administrators need to be aware of, because SSH can slide through your firewall so easy. It can go through any port. So if you don't want your users doing things like that, you got your work cut out for you. How to show video through VNC. I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you mean like a movie, an animation? Because all VNC does, it just shows you what's happening on the computer you're logged into. If that makes any sense. And there is one other cool thing you can do with our desktop. You can have like a classroom session. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of VNC. You can have like a classroom session where multiple people can log in. So if you want to have some kind of presentation on your desktop, then just have these people open VNC sessions to your computer, and you can all see the same thing. Now, it doesn't have any kind of really good controls. It doesn't show you who's logged in. If somebody's a problem, you can't kick them off. You have to close the whole session. But now it has its uses, assuming that you're dealing with fairly civilized people. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Last call for questions. And thank you for asking ones that I mostly know the answers to. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up then. I want to thank everybody for coming. This was an interesting and fun experience, and I hope it gave you some good ideas for things that are going to be useful to you. And I'm going to end with a final nag to, please be careful with your security. SSH tunnels are awesome. SSH itself can do so many things. Another advantage of FreeNX is it incorporates encryption. So actually, I'm going to talk myself into liking it, even if commercial versions are not open source. They are very good. Thank you again, and you all have a really good day.